Good morning to you all. Welcome to Sunrise Daily today. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
Good morning and welcome. I'm Ayo Makinde.
Good morning from Abuja. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.
Well, many could almost forget that the country recorded 417 new cases of COVID-19 yesterday. Lagos having about 207. And different states are still recording different figures. So not to forget that, because the BTF on COVID-19, when they had their briefing, and then that announcement about the resumption of flights, appears as though back to business, business as usual. But hey, not so fast. So we'll see how the dailies reflect some of those scenarios. Yes, indeed, the minister, upon that announcement, even though people are still trying to get used to the protocol when you're making the rounds with the domestic flights, social distancing. Some of them observe it in the plane, some of them don't. Who knows if it will change eventually. But then we also do know that I don't know if it's come to stay now, where there are no in-flight services. Well, they say, look, it's just within the country. You don't need that as such. Even though many wonder, they bet to disagree, but look, yeah, certain measures are being taken. All right, let's take a look at what the dailies are reflecting today. Mr. Daya Kintobi joins us to take us through some of those headlines today. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Always a pleasure to be here.
All right, look at Nigerian Tribune, how they reflected. COVID-19 test a must as international flights resume August 29. So there you go. You have to do this test. What kind of dynamics do you see playing out to this one?
At the barest minimum, that test must be done. And we also need to have some measure of self-quarantine, self-isolation after people start coming into the country. Because even though it's starting to look like COVID may have peaked, but the numbers are still so haphazard that the infection is clearly still raging. So we can't afford to take any chances. Yes, we need to get back a semblance of normalcy in our lives to some extent. So opening the airspace is due. It is a correct move as long as the right measures are put in place.
And speaking about the right measures, I think some of the international flights, at the time they spoke about, I think some of the Arabian ones talked about getting this COVID-19 certificate before you board the airline or to Nigeria. And some argued at the point that, well, it could be because, look, Nigerian airspace wasn't open yet, just the evacuation flights that were taking place. And so because of the market, the huge number of travelers from Nigeria, they may soft-pedal a little bit, but who knows? Do you see that happen?
No, at the moment, the requirement is that you must have taken a COVID test at least 2 weeks before you take a flight and no less than 5 days before. So we can't escape. The issue of testing is critical. However, we do know that there's an incubation period for the virus. So we have to accommodate that, which is why they're saying you must have taken one no more than 2 weeks before and preferably 5 days before your flight.
Do we expect this to be not just Nigerian flyers, even if you're coming into the country, you request a certificate to come into our own airspace?
Absolutely. Wherever you may be coming from, there are COVID hotspots all over the world, and it doesn't matter where you're coming from. It doesn't matter what your nationality is. COVID doesn't discriminate among nationalities. So whoever you are, wherever you're coming from, you should be subjected to this test.
So there you go. We'll see if that 2-week quarantine, or is it 1 week now when you land in certain countries, if they're going to waive it. Some have argued that will kill the aviation industry if countries insist on that, but we don't know.
Well, Nigeria is saying you should voluntarily self-isolate, and we know how efficiently that works, don't we? So it's not going to be mandatory, like they just haul you off the plane and go lock you up somewhere for 2 weeks. They're saying be responsible. Take it upon yourself to do the right thing and go and keep yourself somewhere for 2 weeks on your own volition.
And if people don't?
Well, I mean, we know people won't. We know that already. We know that some will, some won't. The question is those who don't, what do you then do?
Exactly.
Look at the riders, if it helps in any way. Patients' rights WAEC exams at isolation center as the exam begins under strict protocols. task force warns states on foreign Jews. Will be interesting to see how states manage this part of the whole thing. And then look at this one. Reps Amechi differ on $33 billion rail project loan. Lawmakers query DMO over non-inclusion of contract agreements. Demand daily details of $500 million satellite rural telephony contract. Where is this headed?
What a mess. The first thing I asked was that where was the House of Rep when all this paperwork was being done? I think before the loan was approved, it had to pass through their committees. It had to be approved by the House. So you ask yourself, what due diligence did they do then that they're now crying foul after the fact? I mean, there's all kinds of speculation that a blank contract was signed without the details. They are now calling the administration to task and saying you didn't do the right thing, but they approved the loan in the first place. So
what did they approve before now verifying or checking what was approved?
They're trying to put the cart before the horse. They put the cart before the horse. They're now saying we didn't do what we should have done then, but they're not blaming themselves. They're trying to blame the administration.
You know, one of the questions that the National Assembly has been asking is the details of the
transaction,
the whole transaction and all.
Yes.
Should they have had that before they approved the?
Absolutely. Why would you sign something that you don't know the details of? Why would you approve it? I think that's why I said they didn't do due diligence. I think that they should have, at the point of investigating and trying to determine if it was a worthy loan. I think the issue of taking the loan itself is not really controversial. The point is, can we afford to pay it back? All this issue about sovereignty and we're ceding our sovereignty to China. And the question is, we take this loan for an infrastructure project. Before we took that loan, have we examined our cash flow? Look, for example, our budget is based on oil at $70 a barrel, 2 million barrels a day. Right now, oil is $40 a barrel, and we're producing 1.4 million barrels a day. So there's a budget shortfall. So the question you begin to ask yourself is, can we really afford this loan? How will we pay it back?
That's Tribune this morning.
The Guardian newspaper leads with fatigue slows down Nigeria's COVID-19 fight. Well, some would say about time, but I don't know what you make of it. Minister tells Nigerians to adopt treatment protocol. INCB, WHO, UNODC insist on approved medicines. Africa marks 6 months of first COVID-19 cases. Which of these caught your fancy that you'd like to comment on? But first of all, is that fatigue thing that slowed down our fight? Do you think so?
Well, yes. After a while, fatigue does set in, and we've been dealing with this for 6 months now. So everybody's tired, without a doubt, and testing has reduced. Reagents are not in wide supply. There's mental fatigue from the frontline people. If you look at the briefings today compared to when they first started, there was a lot more energy, a lot more passion, even from the PTF, even from the state task forces. You could see a lot more energy. But we've been fighting this fight for so long now. People are getting weary. The frontline fighters are tired. We ourselves who are on the sidelines sitting, observing are tired. So it is a lot of mental heavy lifting to wage this war, and it's taking its toll. I don't necessarily know that fatigue is leading to a reduction in the numbers. Yeah. I just think that perhaps the virus is peaking now and we're able to better defend against it. But by and large, it's a combination of a bit of everything. But yes, fatigue is definitely...
Because when you talk about fatigue slowing it down, you just wonder to what extent. I mean, if people have a lot more information, if they are managing it a lot better, if they're responding better, okay, well. But the World Bank went for COVID-19. Fatigue can't slow down.
No, where money is concerned, fatigue never sets in.
If anything, it energizes.
It does.
But you know, this whole fatigue thing doesn't get any better given that we haven't had much headway, so to speak, globally about a vaccine or at least some form of solution to help manage it globally.
Well, Russia says they've got a vaccine.
And which the WHO is contesting.
Yes, they're absolutely contesting that. I don't think it went through all of the necessary steps and all of the testing and all that.
They're already mass producing.
Yeah,
the production, they've kicked in production.
Yes, but they will only feed it to their own people for now. So, hey, the leadership is responsible for what they foist upon their people. But yes, global response has been a bit slower than preferable. But I think that's because we're dealing with an unknown element here. We have no experience in
But different
handling-
countries still
handling
take
this.
the protocol very seriously.
Absolutely. Some countries have locked back down in Europe.
Scotland too, apply violated the COVID-19 lockdown and they almost postponed the leave again.
Yes.
So it's still very serious.
Very much so.
All right, that's The Guardian this morning.
Let's see if we can quickly take a look at leadership newspapers. Looking at the front page this morning, we thought this was done and dusted, but look, it's back up there. Drama as Tribunal annuls Bayelsa governorship poll. That's the lead headline there. INEC rejects judgment, says ANDP fielded underage candidate. Diri goes on appeal. Jubilation among APC supporters. Again, APC PDP clash over conduct of elections. So everyone thought this Bayelsa election was done and dusted, all the cases perhaps sorted, but these came out of the blues. How did it hit you?
Well, I see it as a bit of poetic justice, actually, because at the end of the day, it was the courts that anointed the current governor. And so it's a bit poetic that the very same courts are the one who are now kicking him out. My concern is that I think when the courts play a frontline role in electoral decisions, I think it diminishes the majesty of the electorate as the predominant decider of who leads them. I'm not very happy with this notion of an activist court that seems to be the one who determines who rules. So here we have Bayelsa as a test case, and in both situations affecting both parties, it's the court that's determining. So the will of the people is more or less subjugated to next to nothing. That's my concern. The technicalities of one party wasn't allowed to run, and INEC is saying that the person they fielded was 34 years old when they fielded him, and they told the party then, you can't field this candidate because his age doesn't qualify. They now brought a lady to substitute for that person, and that person was brought in after the cutoff date. So they didn't allow the substitute candidate to replace the underage person. So they barred the party from contesting. So these are technicalities. And I just worry that the more we have courts determining who rules us, the less we the people have a say.
But if you also look at the implications of that, I think that's going to be discussed much later in the program anyway. But if you look at the implications of that, it's also contesting INEC's powers to be able to disqualify candidates. The court ruled that INEC had no powers to disqualify any candidate. I mean, how do you review that? Do you think that could be right, or is it something that INEC should contest?
Well, the courts are the last resort when it comes to legal issues like this. Whether INEC has the authority to disqualify candidates or not is probably a constitutional issue that the courts are the ones that have the purview to determine. And I don't think any law is a law until it's contested and it is tried all the way to the Supreme Court. So it's good for us to decide now and determine now whether INEC has that power or not, so that in the future we can avoid these kind of conundrums.
Well, we have a number of other stories which I'm going to leave our viewers to do by themselves. But if you look just beneath the nameplate, Wada Maida dies at 70. It's on the front page. They also have IBB clocking 79. He says, keep hope alive. IBB urges Nigerians. Military kills scores in Sambisa Forest, bombs 12 bandits camps, and on it goes. Let's leave it there for leadership newspapers.
Then on to the Daily Times. Why Diri lost heads for appeal court. So a lot of that you've highlighted. But the thing about this is that, okay, well, some of the papers you have it. All right, let me move on to this other one. Mental health. I know it doesn't grab the headlines as much. 4 in 5 Nigerian employees risk mental disorder, experts warn. And you know, symptoms are very subtle. It just creeps up at you. You never take them seriously. Is it an African thing, the way we approach some of these things? Because we tend to ignore some of those symptoms, thinking, no, okay, well, I can do this. Another, well, until it hits you. But this, do we pay as much attention to this?
Not enough, because it's a stigma in our culture that someone has mental health issues. It's swept under the rug, it's put aside, it's locked in the closet. We don't address these things. In more advanced economies, you see psychologists, therapists. In America, for example, just about every average citizen has a counselor, a therapist, a consultant, a mental health expert. They go to counseling. But here, the moment we begin to address issues of mental health, there's a stigma attached to it that makes people run away from it. If we have people we know or relatives who need help, rather than publicly cry out for help, we try and manage it internally, because there's a stigma associated with it.
Well, you know, isn't it curious? Because, I mean, you know, psychologists will tell you that, you know, the issues of mental, you know, cases or whatever is a spectrum. And one of them actually is anxiety, which is very, very, very common in the whole space. So shouldn't we even now be giving more attention to it? Perhaps also send out more communication about it?
Yes, especially at a time like this where anxiety is rife in society. Unemployment rates are going through the roof. We're about 25% now in unemployment. The economy is a problem for people. Some people literally don't know where their next meal is coming from. So this is a time of high anxiety, high levels of pressure and stress. And these are the kind of things that accumulate and weigh on mental capabilities. So I think, yes, that the health sector should begin to preach publicly guidelines for safeguarding mental health, especially at a time of heightened stress as we live in now.
And then they've got an editorial which is about the carnage in southern Kaduna. That's the Daily Times, the editorial that they've got here today. So, but about that development, security now in southern Kaduna, can you wrap your head around how some of these things are happening?
Well, I was a bit perturbed when Governor El-Rufai came out yesterday and said that some of the leaders in southern Kaduna who could wade into this issue and begin to try to resolve it are basically waiting for government to settle them. He talked about brown envelope syndrome, and that there are people who are actually involved in this, kind of sort of extorting government or wanting government to settle them before this issue can be put to bed. And my question was, if you actually know these people, and it is the truth, not just an arrant statement, then get law enforcement involved. How can we now sit back and allow violence, killings, and mayhem to run rampant simply because, if truthfully, there is a pocket of society that benefits from that, and we know them, we should address it from a law enforcement perspective.
The other part of that too that could raise a lot more eyebrow is that, is this a recent trend, or has it been for a long time? Because if they say that this has been happening for over 40 years, is it that these same chaps, generation after generation, wait for government to settle them?
The governor said yesterday that it's not a new issue, that it's been happening for 20, 30, 40 years. But if it's been that long, and whatever methodology we've been using to address it is not working, obviously for it to still prevail this long, then we need to look back and review our methods and come up with better solutions. Yes, it is true. This has been an issue for a very long time. So I think we need to regroup, look at what we're doing to address it, and adjust.
That's Daily Times this morning.
News Director also leads this morning with the Bayelsa election annulment. Diri, INEC to appeal tribunal's judgment. APC, BMO, Lord judgment. We've spoken a lot about that already. ICPC, NUC move against illegal degree schools, sexual harassment in tertiary institutions. One would have expected that with all the talk about this whole sexual harassment thing, including the law coming on stream, this would have been reduced.
It seems to be a big problem in our society now.
In an illegal degree school?
Yes. Even in an illegal degree school, there's sexual harassment. So you can imagine what's happening in the legal.
I'm trying to understand, how do people even go to illegal degree schools in the first place? So why are they going to pirate some of it?
Desperation. We have more students than we have educational institutions. So some people end up, at the end of the day, we need this degree to get ahead. So they get caught in the system.
That's the News Direct this morning. Malpe.
Well, let's see if we can quickly look at Daily Trust for you. Looking just, yes, see there. Federal government signed multi-billion naira loan deals before negotiating terms, as according to reps. I think you already touched a bit on that earlier in the very first paper we reviewed. You have riders to that story. Uncover $33 billion contract without clear-cut terms. Probe politically, well, you saw that yesterday. Probe politically motivated, that's according to Amechi. Sovereignty clause in agreement, standard practice, as according to the ministry. There's been a lot of hula baloo over that. Looks like maybe it's just been a lot of hot air. We don't know. Well, we know, but we don't know. Page 5 is where you see all the details. Uneasy calm in Bayelsa as tribunal sacks Governor Diri is also there. If we don't check insecurity, it could lead to chaos. That's according to Governor Masari, and Nigeria resumes international flight August 29. That's according to the federal government. Let's look at this one. If we don't check insecurity, it could lead to chaos. We've seen a number of steps in the last couple of days to try and check the spate of insecurity in the country. Would you say that you're satisfied so far? I mean, for instance, we've seen special forces being deployed to Kaduna to check what is going on, to check the banditry going on there. We've seen peace moves by certain groups to try and see how they can douse the tension in parts of Kaduna. We've seen the governor of Borno head a committee to try and see what can happen with, routing out Boko Haram insurgents in the northeast of the country. And on, we've seen, moves here and there. Are these moves ones that satisfy you?
Well, it's gratifying to see that the government is ramping up its efforts to try and arrest the spate of violence. Nothing is absolutely too extreme to try when it comes to this issue of curbing the spate of violence. It's got to a point where the sanctity of human life has been diminished so vastly that no step is too extreme to take to try and protect life and property in certain areas of the country today. I think the government is making good strides. The efforts in the last few days have shown that there's a commitment and a strong will to address this issue. Perhaps they were a bit slow in starting to ramp up the efforts, but I think we're off to a good start, and I hope we begin to see positive results very soon.
All right, then. So, okay, that I guess that's it. All right, so that's a look at some of the dailies here today. We do thank you for coming on, Daya Kintobi, guiding us through some of those headline stories. We will be back and take a look at what else is going on in just a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back. So we've got two gentlemen joining us to weigh into that matter. Mr. Matthias Emeribe, a legal practitioner. Thank you for coming on this morning.
My pleasure.
We also have Emmanuel Anene joining us from Abuja. He's the National Legal Advisor of ANDP. Thank you for joining us as well today on the program. Well,
thank you, Chamberlain, and thank you, Nigerians.
All right. So this judgment, yes, the governor did say it's a dissenting judgment, it's not a unanimous judgment, even though we'll come to see perhaps where his point is or what he may be alluding to. But the entirety of this majority judgment, how does he stand for you?
Well, let me say good morning, viewers, because concerning this judgment, particularly the majority judgment, I am of the view, with due respect, that it has a tendency of being lost when it is given what you may call the real constitutional test. I say this because there are two basic and fundamental points I felt that the tribunal or the majority, judges appear to have lost while carrying out their function or their duty. First of all, there's what you call some preliminary and fundamental issue, which is the issue of jurisdiction. I have raised a fundamental question. Is the tribunal still seized with the action in question that they adjudicated upon, in view of the fact that the election we are talking about took place on the 16th day of November 2019, and if there's anything, the result of that election was announced on the 17th, which is the next day of November 2019. Now the question is, if by the Constitution, if you go to section 285 sub 5, it requires that for there to be, for the tribunal itself to be vested with the jurisdiction to hear the matter, the petitioner in question must first of all file the action in question within 21 days from the day the result was declared. And if the result was declared on the 17th of November, the presumption is that by early December, the matter ought to have been filed at the tribunal. And then from that December, you begin to count 680 days, and which presumed that the matter or the tribunal will cease to have jurisdiction by May, so to say. Now, the import of that is that first, can this judgment still stand in the face of this constitutional provision that has provided time?
We'll come to that.
That is one.
Which of the event do you say happened on the 16th?
On the 16th was the election itself. Election took place on the 16th of November, 2019. Then the announcement took place the next day, which was on the 17th. Yeah. That is talking about the declaration of the results. Now, from that date, you begin to now count 21 days for purpose of filing the petition. So
in other words, are you saying this is what, a pre or post-election
matter? No.
They don't have jurisdiction to rule on the matter?
No, first of all, I am saying that if any action is to be taken to vest jurisdiction of the court first, it must be done within the confines of the provision of the Constitution. That's one. Then secondly, on the issue of the subject in question, that is the issue that was brought, that is that the court should determine that they were unlawfully excluded. With the greatest respect, I think that the case in question ought to have been a pre-election matter in view of the fact that that was an issue that came up before the election itself took place, so to say. Because I remember quite vividly that was a case where notice was issued by INEC to even in Kogi and Bayelsa that the time for their nomination to be filed in will lapse on the 9th of September.
All right, let's get Mr. Nana to also give his opening comment. Well, the judgment may, because we already see some people jubilating, but is it too early for them to be going about it in that way?
Good morning, Nigerians, once again. I think my learned friend in Lagos studio missed a lot of points. not abreast with the happening or what happened in Bayelsa. On the 16th of November 2019, election into the office of the governor of Bayelsa State was conducted. On the 17th of September 2019, November 2019, 17th of November 2019, a return was made. And that return was David Lyon of APC. Now, there was a pre-election matter that went up to the Supreme Court. And on the 13th of February 2020, the election of David Lyon of APC was nullified because the deputy governor, Honorable Degi, had some issues with his names and the certificates. Now, the Supreme Court went further to order the Independent National Electoral Commission to issue certificate of return to the second runner-up if he met the constitutional requirement. Now, premised on that, on the 14th day of February 2020, that is on Valentine's Day, INEC made a fresh declaration wherein His Excellency Governor Drediri was declared winner and returned. Now, Section 285 that my learned friend cited, when does the file 21 days begins to count? In the eyes of the law, the declaration and subsequent return on the 17th of November 2019 never happened because it had been overturned by the Supreme Court of Nigeria. Now, 21 days begins to run from the date the declaration was made. And the declaration in this instance is the declaration made on the 14th of February. And ANDP filed a petition on the 26th of February 2020. So that takes it out of it. He's not well abreast with the matter. Now, the second issue is what he talked about, a pre-election matter. Now, what happened was this. ANDP made a nomination. And that nomination was received by INEC. And INEC wrote a letter to ANDP, drawing their attention to the fact that the deputy governorship candidate is underaged. Now, it was within the time allowed for substitution, and that is 45 days. ANDP wrote a letter. It just for the sake of being abundance excursion. Now, renominated another deputy candidate, which was submitted to INEC, and draw the INEC's attention to the fact that Section 31, and I want everybody to read Section 31 of the Electoral Act. Section 31 of the Electoral Act says, any political party shall nominate any person they wishes to sponsor in an election to the commission within 60 days, provided, and that is a proviso there, the operative words are proviso, provided that the commission shall not have the right to exclude or disqualify any candidate. These are the clear provisions of the law. So the operative words there is shall, which is mandatory, and the other one is proviso. And if you have a proviso in any statute, the interpretation of that statute is predicated on the proviso. Now, Section 31 clearly takes out the power of INEC to disqualify anybody. That power is vested with the court. If you read subsection 2 of Section 31 of the Electoral Act, it said any candidate for an election shall file his document, shall file his nomination, he shall file all his particulars, alongside with an affidavit stating the fact that he has complied with all the constitutional provisions. Now, subsection 3 provides that INEC shall within 7 days of receiving this information publish same at the headquarters of the constituency, in this case Yenegua, where the election is going to take place. Now, what it means, Section 4 says any person can apply, so that is subsection 4 of Section 31, any person can apply to INEC after payment of prescribed fee for certified true copies of this document. Subsection 5 now says any person, I'm coming. Section 5 says any person who is of the opinion or who is led to believe that the information so supplied by the candidate who is standing in for an election can approach the High Court of a state, of FCT, of the Federal High Court to nullify that person's candidature. Any person, include any person can do that. Now, subsection 6 says, if the court is convinced that information so supplied by such candidate are false, the court will now nullify the candidature of that person. These are clear provisions of the law. So the power to exclude or to disqualify candidate is taken away by this electoral act and decided with the established court of law.
Okay, let me let Bayelsa respond to some of the provisions that he's highlighted.
A quick one. First, let me deal with the issue of the action that was filed in February 26th.
Saying that the initial action was non-existent.
Yes. The position is that he is mistaking, with due respect to my learned colleague, is mistaking a return that was made from a declaration by INEC. Now, that declaration didn't change. What was declared in November, and that's on the 17th day of November, remains what was declared on the 14th by INEC. It didn't change. So he must not mistake it for the return. The return that was made in February is different from the return that was made in November 2019. In other words, what I'm saying here is that he is mistaking the declaration, because the language of the constitution says declaration of result. He's not talking about return. So in other words, your action shall be filed only upon, within 21 days after declaration of result, not upon the return of any person.
Which was what date?
Which was, the declaration of result was done on the 17th of November. So meaning that if that action must be filed to have its substance being heard by any court in this land, particularly the tribunal, it must be done after 21 days from the date of the declaration of the result, which was done in November. What was done in February was a return, because one, the result that you had declared in November didn't change when it was done again in February. So that was one. So secondly, on the issue of disqualification, please, yes, I'm trying to clarify the point. Right. When he talks about disqualification, he must distinguish between when INEC refuse, when an application is made to INEC and that application is not complete, vis-a-vis where that application is complete, but a person does not have the requisite indices to be able to contest the election. Now, in such a situation, when you are talking of disqualification, it does not fall within INEC to do so. But in a situation where the application in question is not proper, just like talking about filling form, why then do you file the affidavit and so on and so forth? Now, let's assume that irrespective of the fact that the political party in question has agreed, or should I say had validly nominated his candidate, and they now refuse, with the greatest respect, to file the affidavit, to file the form ECF 1 to INEC, would it be deemed that they have validly done the nomination that the law requires them to do? It will be deemed that they have, by implication, surrendered or decided to be not interested in continuing with the election.
Okay.
As it were.
Let me ask Mr. Adede this question. Well, some of the things that you have said so far would seem a little confusing to some people, but let me ask you this straight up. Does INEC have a right to come up with a date or schedule of activities for an election?
Yeah, before I answer that question, let me respond to what he just said. Supreme Court ordered Independent National Electoral Commission to look at the results and see if the runner-up met the constitutional requirement. Now, on the 14th day of February 2020, what happened was not only a return, it was declaration. Because all the votes that were cast for David Lyon of APC were voided. That led INEC to another valid declaration, because INEC cross-checked their records and found out that Doedri of PDP, having met the constitutional requirement, is hereby declared elected and validly certified. So what is he going to do? He's changing history. And if you look at Section 31 of the Electoral Act, it says if a political party files their nomination in a prescribed form, he's trying to supplant his emotions or his intentions with the statutory provisions. It is not that way. Once a political party files their nomination in a prescribed form, if there is a valid nomination, the INEC's power, boardroom power to disqualify candidates is taken away. If you look at that,
let me to jump in here now before you respond to the second question.
Not disqualify
just a minute.
Or exclude.
You did say now that if there is a valid nomination, so at this point, the point he's making is that you haven't even fulfilled that condition precedent of a valid nomination to warrant to even argue that your candidate was disqualified.
That provision is resided with the court. That is why subsection 6 of section 31 said, if you are alleged, he is the one alleging. We have the opinion that we have complied with the constitutional provisions. Now, it is now in the domicile with the court of law to decide whether, looking at the document we filed before the Independent National Electoral Commission, whether we have met constitutional provision or not. And not
again, answer that question, Mr. Nene. Just one moment, Mr. Nene. Answer that question. Answer that question frontally, based on the requirements of the law. Was ANDP duly? Did they file these documents duly, knowing that one of the candidates is underaged?
You see, if you say knowing.
Do we need the courts to prove that, Mr. Nene? Do we need the courts?
You said that you answer the question frontally.
Okay, go on. Do we need the courts to prove that anyway?
Answer the question frontally.
Go ahead.
Yes. ANDP validly nominated their candidate. He followed due process of nomination. First, ANDP notified the commission that the party is going to conduct its primaries on XYZ date. And on that XYZ date, INEC monitored the conduct of that primaries. And when INEC monitored the conduct of that primaries, a candidate from ANDP emerged as the winner to flag the flag of ANDP. Now, ANDP proceeded to file the name of this candidate and his deputy in a prescribed form, as provided for by Section 31 of the Electoral Act. They have complied with the law. So if anybody is of the opinion or inclined to believe that ANDP filed a candidate who is short of the constitutional requirement, that takes us to Section 36. Section 31 of Section 6 of Electoral Act. That gives the court the privilege to look at the documents and ascertain whether such candidate is qualified.
Okay,
or
Mr.
not.
Nene, I'm wondering, just one moment. I'm wondering if we needed to go as far as the court if the conditions of the law were to be fulfilled to the letter. But let's bring it back to Lagos.
Yes, let me just quickly address the point concerning the action that was filed by ANDP. Now, first, we must understand that the judgment that was given by the Supreme Court on the 13th day of February 2020 is a pre-election judgment. It's a judgment concerning pre-election. It is not a judgment concerning the election itself proper.
Which affected a post-election decision.
Exactly. Now, it's not that. So what it did was to settle the question of eligibility to contest that 2019 election. That's what the Supreme Court settled. And therefore, if we are dealing with the election proper, because the Supreme Court wasn't dealing with the election proper.
Just one moment before you go on. Please. The decision of the Supreme Court, did it nullify the action of November?
It didn't. It only set the record straight as these are the people who ought to have contested this election.
Consequently,
nothing more.
Consequently, you're saying that the decision, the declaration of that day is still superior to that of the Supreme Court. Is that what you're saying?
The declaration of
November 17, as you have said.
It still subsists. It has not been annulled. The declaration that was made that day is not. The only thing is that by virtue of the fact that because all those results still remains there, except the one for the APC where they said, look, because you are not supposed to be in this contest, therefore all votes that you got by implication are wasted votes. So that is not to say that it changes what the score or the result or the declaration that was made in favor of the PDP that is, that was declared to be the winner or that was returned as the winner. It doesn't change the score, just like that in respect of other political parties. Now, let me even take up the issue of the concerning the declaration. I mean the pre-election matter. Now, if INEC has written to you on the 27th that, look, you are not going to be in this ballot, by virtue of the fact that your nomination is what? 40. Now, what does that mean? If you go to section 285, subsection 14 of the 1999 Constitution, it requires, in other words, it's a pre-election matter and requires that you must take out an action at the regular court within 14 days from when that injury.
But what about the position of the majority judgment, which says that, well, for INEC not to have notified them that they were not on the ballot, that they found out on the day of election, as a result of not replying to the letter that they wrote?
Yeah, that may be the majority, but of course I read the dissenting judgment, and the dissenting judgment captured all the facts. We may probably turn out to be the real judgment, perhaps at the appellate level.
But at the moment, it's still 2-1.
Yes, at the moment, the majority judgment is a law, as it were, because they didn't see it. But let me even leave that, because if I go to, that's why I'm saying that as far as this case is concerned, there are very many fundamental constitutional issues that the court needs to decide. Like I said, if the tribunal sat and the term was to expire in May, and they now came to give judgment in August, the question is that, do they have the power to extend and enlarge their powers or to extend the time within which to sit? And in any event, on what basis can even the current governor and his deputy be sued when the provision of section 308 of the Constitution is there? In other words, what I'm trying to say, the immunity clause makes it impossible for that action to be taken against them. Because one, at the time the action was brought, they were already a sitting governor. They were neither a candidate,
all right,
well, they were neither aspirants, nor were they just people who just won the election.
All right, we're winding down on this one. Okay, well,
so it's an aberration of the provision of section 308 of the Constitution that says that you cannot sue a sitting governor. I mean, they are immune from being sued, as it were.
Well, Mr. Anene, about that position of the majority judgment, which says that you found out on election day, that those who say, look, even from the point of law, that cannot be, because there are processes leading to that election. You would have received a lot of correspondence, and they would have published names. You clearly would have seen that your candidate's name were not there. So how could you then claim that it was an election that you found out that you were excluded?
Chamberlain, when I said that my learned friend is not abreast of the facts, he just as if to say I'm being hard on him. INEC wrote a letter in September 2019 stating that the name and the logo of NDP is not going to be on the ballot. On the 3rd of October 2019, NDP wrote a letter to INEC in response of their letter, September letter, stating the fact that you lack the constitutional power and the legal power to exclude ANDP and its candidate from participating in the election. The letter further went ahead to urge INEC to rescind its decision immediately and include the name and the logo of ANDP in Bayelsa State gubernatorial election. INEC never replied that letter. Go to INEC and ask them. They never replied that letter. So if in law, silence is consent. The ANDP was led to believe that INEC has, rescinded the decision in view of the fact that they lack the legal power to disqualify their candidate. They mobilized their supporters and went to the pool.
Hang on a minute.
And went to the pool to participate
when you say in law, silence is concerned, do you agree with that? Is it the same?
In this case, INEC has already made its position known on the 27th of September that you are not going to be in this ballot.
Okay.
So at that period, at that time, you have been put on notice.
All right.
So to not say that silence in law, the letter you wrote on the 3rd of October, is it a court order that is mandating?
We'll take you from that point when we come back in just a moment. Please stay with us. Mr. Nana, let's get back to you on this one because, I mean, he has responded saying, look, yes, INEC did right, and subsequently they went ahead and published those details, having notified you that you haven't fulfilled the requirements, so you couldn't have been claiming unlawful exclusion if you haven't been validly nominated. Go ahead and respond to that, please.
You see, these are the issues, these are the impunities going on in INEC. And I urge on the women Nigerians to put INEC on their toes or ask them to do the proper thing. I see no reason why INEC shouldn't have replied that letter of 3rd October 2019. We simply replied the letter written by INEC stating the reasons. You don't have the power to exclude us from the ballot. We urge you to include our name and our party logo in the ballot. INEC never replied that letter. And he is saying that it doesn't matter. So what to him, a letter by INEC on 27th of September makes it fontus official. And that has become a court judgment that you cannot even appeal against. That is impunity. INEC could have replied that letter to say, we stand by our decision. Then court of action could have arisen. But they didn't do that. We are led to believe that INEC read our letter, digested it, and came to the conclusion that they were wrong in excluding us. But that never happened. Let me also address the issue of Section 308 he read. He didn't read it very well. Section 308 does not avail any sitting governor when it comes to a sitting governor or president when it comes to election petition tribunal. The immunity clause does not avail them. That was why Atiku Abubakar took Buhari to court in 2019 general election. Buhari was still having his immunity. Immunity didn't stop Atiku from taking him to court up to Supreme Court. So he should not deceive Nigerians. There is no immunity here when it comes to election petition matter. And once the Supreme Court took that decision on the 13th of February 2020. Anything that took place on the 17th of September, the 17th of November 2019 amounts to nothing. It's illegal. It's void. You cannot put something on nothing and expect it to
hold on, Mr.
stand.
Nene. Just hold on. Hold on a minute.
Now, with due respect to my learned colleague, the question I want to put to him is that something happened since September. You didn't bother to file the action because what you are asking for is to say you were excluded. That's simply the issue you submitted before the tribunal. You were excluded before 16th of November and you knew it. You did not file the action. Why then did you file the action on the 26th of February? Long after the election has ended, a winner had been declared, somebody was to be sworn in, and in fact, they've even sworn in governors, and you now said, governor and the deputy governor, you are now bringing the action on the 26th. For an injury you complained that happened since when? Since 27th of September. Is that not what in law you call an action that was taken malafide? Then, on the issue that you talked about on Section 308, I say this because, one, if at the time Buhari was contesting, the moment you send in your nomination, you are only a contestant at that moment. That's how the constitution regards you to be. Now, if you win and you've not been sworn in, you are only an elected person. You are not the person as the office requires you to be. But the moment you are sworn in, your status automatically changes. And that is why the provision of Section 308 is invoked. So by and large, what I'm trying to say is that before you contest the election, if your party has nominated you, you remain a nominated candidate for that purpose, and therefore your status is not, because you are probably a sitting president, your status will not be looked upon as a sitting president because you are contesting for the election. When the election is contested and the winner is declared, it happens that you are the one that was declared, right. You become somebody that has been elected, and therefore we are still open to be challenged. But after you have been sworn in, with due respect, your status automatically changes by the constitution. So that is the point I'm making here, that by that declaration, when Supreme Court made the declaration or made a return, or rather made that declaration that, look, this man is not qualified, APC don't have candidates. Okay. And I said, give it to PDP. It doesn't mean if they have challenged it, there is no problem. But the moment INEC made a declaration and they were sworn in, that's very nice. The status of Michael changes and they become governor and deputy governor that will enjoy.
There's another aspect in that report which we will address, but I know Mr. Nene would like to respond to some of the issues that you raised before we put that question in. So could you go ahead and respond to it?
Yeah, Chamberlain, thank you once again. You see, my Nene friend doesn't understand the way election petition works. If you see, what happened to ANDP was a clear case of exclusion. And then people waited for the constitution of Bayelsa State Gubernatorial Election Petition Tribunal. And once that tribunal is validly constituted, NDP approached the tribunal for redress. I don't know why he's asking us, why didn't we do this? Why didn't we do that? It's no longer an issue. He has been overtaken by event. Once there is a constitution of tribunal to look into the conduct of 2019 Bayelsa State gubernatorial election, any party who felt aggrieved can approach the tribunal, and that is what we did. Now, what is telling us that today, if you are contesting election and you won, you have not been sworn in, your immunity abates. Once you are sworn in, your immunity returns. So why did even took Buhari to Supreme Court,
okay,
even when immunity has returned?
I'd like both of you to respond to this part of the report which you played before you came on. We saw people jubilating and many are wondering, upon where is this coming from? I mean, ruling is getting different interpretations from different people. Now, for those who were jubilating in Bayelsa, Mr. Nana, talking about the APC candidates, whether or not they're going to contest, could you address these things? Where did they get this from? What is the position of the law and what could likely happen?
Well, you see, I'm not holding brief for APC, but I'm just a lawyer. You know, as a priest in the Temple of Justice, I can address issues to the best of my knowledge. One, there are series of election in Nigeria. We have general election, and even general election in Nigeria has lost its meaning because it's not so general again. Because Anambra State, Osun State, and some other states are not participating in the general election when it regards to gubernatorial election. Now, we have a by-election, like the one that is coming up on the 30th of October this year. If there is a vacancy arising from death or voluntary resignation or insanity or something like that, then political parties in by-election are allowed to do fresh nomination because there is a by-election. Now, there is what we call fresh election. If you give it a literary interpretation, probably that is what Bayelsans are giving it, a literary interpretation of fresh election. Tribunal ordered a fresh election. Fresh election means everything is fresh. A fresh nomination, a fresh conduct of election, and a fresh return. So that's why they are jubilating.
Well, what then happens to the Supreme Court position?
If this matter goes to Supreme Court,
yeah.
If this matter goes to Supreme Court and Supreme Court upheld the decision to say there shall be a fresh election, what it means to ordinary Bayelsa who is jubilating is that there will be a fresh nomination in which their candidate of choice may be nominated by his political party or by another political party to contest for the rerun election. So that is why they are jubilating. Okay. But for me, a court must speak into this and said whether fresh election means fresh nomination, or fresh election includes fresh nomination, or fresh election is just for a rerun. A rerun means run again. Those who ran before can now go back and run again. So it's a whole gamut of legal technicalities that the court needed to decide on.
Go ahead.
Well, as to the jubilation, that is purely within the purview of the political party because they probably have their nuances concerning how to interpret that judgment.
But from the point of law,
now,
is it valid jubilation or just what?
No, you don't. The issue of valid jubilation does not. You don't have valid or invalid jubilation.
No, because
you can jubilate for wrongfulness. You can jubilate for rightfulness. But whatever you have, like I said, it is the intent of those who are.
The intent is they feel that their candidate can contest if this matter gets to Supreme Court.
Well, nobody has told me that they feel. But the truth remains that even if the court, if let's even assume without conceding that that's going to be the position that there's going to be a fresh election. the position has been settled by the Supreme Court that if their own part candidate, their choice candidate, is not qualified by implication to be in the election.
That's as it stands now.
Yes.
What this case gets to the Supreme Court, and Supreme Court rules that there shall be fresh election.
Even if they rule that there will be fresh election, by the pronouncement they made,
the earlier judgment by the
yes,
Supreme
it still
Court.
subsists. It still subsists. It has not in any way given a reinvigoration or resurrected.
Even though that conversation, that decision of the Supreme Court was more about the deputy governor.
No, it doesn't matter. They both have a joint ticket.
Yeah. All right, gentlemen, we do thank you for sharing your perspectives. Matthias Emeribe, legal practitioner, and Malolane, national legal advisor to ANDP. Thank you for your thoughts. We will be back in a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back. So, yes, that is our next focus. And we've got retired Major General Garba Wahab, who joins us from our studios in Abuja. He is a former Director of Operations, Army Headquarters, GOC 1 Division, and the former Chief of Army Administration. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. Now, the different rhetorics making the rounds about what is going on, not just in Southern Kaduna, but security across the country. And so people glean whatever they can from what they hear, but as a military person, looking at all of these things that are happening, what impressions do you have about how we're approaching this, the rhetoric coming from the political actors, and ultimately with a view to us getting a solution to some of these challenges?
Thank you very much, Chamberlain. From what is happening in Kaduna, maybe people are beginning to take the right steps, because it is not by deployment of soldiers or military men in crisis areas that will solve the problem. We need to address the causative factors. What are the reasons? What are the causes of this crisis? If we don't address the causes, we'll just be looking at the symptoms and be solving the symptoms rather than looking at the issues. And I believe there is so much to be done in terms of getting the communities, the local populace to believe in what is happening around them. One of the basic problems we have is that governance at the local level had virtually collapsed. So we need to seriously address the issue of local governance and letting the people believe and trust in what is available within the local communities. Because even no matter the level you deployed, urban operations suck the military, suck human beings, and they cannot address whatever is on ground. Bring all the military guys, all the policemen, civil defense, SSS, bring them together and deploy them. For instance, in Kaduna, it will not solve the problem. Because if the people don't participate, don't believe in what you're doing, you are just wasting your time.
You began by saying that we need to look at the root causes of this problem, and you have also referenced the local communities. As you also heard, many believe that this issue is at least 40 years old, came to a head in 1992 with the Zango-Kataf crisis. If the problem has lasted for so long, and several different people have led the people at different times over these 40 years, what then is the core problem?
You see, we need to understand one thing. Social, religious, and ethnic issues are identity issues, and they are stronger to resolve. You find it very, very difficult to resolve compared to economic issues. If it had to be economic issue, you can easily come and negotiate and agree as to the way to solve the problem or compensate somebody. But when it borders on identity, it becomes very, very difficult. So we need to look at the real issues. Back in Zango-Kataf, what was the problem? The issue of bringing somebody from elsewhere to come and aid a particular community. And a serving officer was jailed. And since then, this problem has been a recurring issue. So we need to really go down to the root causes and get the people to believe in the various efforts that is being put in place now. Yes, a lot of people might have governed the place, a lot of efforts might have gone in, but were those efforts actually addressing the problems? That's the question.
In other words, what you're saying, if I get you properly, is that no matter how these strategies happen, if people don't see that justice is being done, this thing will go on for a while longer.
Justice delayed is justice denied. We've delayed justice for a long time. And so the people will believe that they've been denied something. And so they hold on tenaciously to their belief. So we need to break that belief. We need to get across and build trust and build confidence. That is the only time that you can deploy, even if you deploy a few number of police personnel or civil defense, they will be able to provide information as to this is what is happening. But if you don't put everybody in there, nobody's going to give them information. I was in one day as the GOC. We try so much to get across to the communities, but at a particular point, you hit a heartbreak because the problem has not been resolved. The people believe, look, what is there? Why do we need to believe you if the causes of these issues have not been addressed?
Can we say the same thing for the country in terms of the insurgency, how people are protesting over security lapses in different parts, even though, yes, the president has said, just be a little patient. We're going to get more equipment, more boots on the ground, and then some recruitment is going on. Are those, from what he has said, do you think those will address the problem?
Those will provide that environment that people will not attack themselves for you to be able to talk, but they don't really address the problem. And in my center, we look at this issue based on PC. 4 P's and 4 C's. The P stands for you need to plan to get people to be prepared. You need to persevere. You need to have patience. While the C talks about communication, whatever you are doing, if you don't know what you're doing, if you are not communicating from up, down, and down, up, you will have problems. Even those agencies, when they don't communicate among themselves, you have issues, you have lack of cooperation, lack of collaboration. And above all, there should be coordination of all these efforts. We are working in silos, everybody working independently of the others. So if you don't have a situation where somebody is coordinating all these efforts, you just be wasting your time. But above all, Nigerians need to be patient. We want things done. Quick answers to our problems. It is very easy to destroy something, but very, very difficult to rebuild. That's the problem we're facing.
Well, yeah.
I'm wondering, I mean, you've nailed the issue of equipment and all of that. But the question that was asked is about security across board. Do you think we have an understanding of the various issues we have in the various parts of Nigeria where we are having security challenges? We have just talked about Kaduna and its own peculiarity. There is also the issue in the northeast that also has its own peculiarities, and a number of pockets of little violence all over the nation. Do you think we have is there a central reason for all of these, or they're just different issues, different security challenges in different areas of Nigeria that need to be approached differently?
Every problem has its causes. So we need to understand that the same shoe size fits all is not the solution. It can't work. We've talked about that on the economic issue when IMF will determine this is the way you should do, and that is the standard for everybody. We can't do that. We are doing that in Nigeria, where we say, look, if there is a problem, bring in the military. It is easier, it is cheaper, it is faster. But that is not the solution. The solution is understanding what is the problem here, what is the problem over there. And then planning. Like I said, we need to start planning, looking at the various scenarios from different parts of the country, and then preparing for whatever it is. And that's the only way by which you can address the problem from, for instance, the Northwest is different from the problem of the Northeast, different from the problem of the South-South, different from the problem of the... But they might look similar, and you might want to address them in the same way unilaterally. It is not possible. You can't address them uniformly. Deploy military guys, deploy security agencies. The problems differ from one area to the other. So until we understand, and we can only understand when we plan and when we prepare for all this, and that's what I'm saying. You can't do anything without planning, and you can't do anything without preparing for whatever comes in. And it is by when you plan, you understand that these are problems that are facing you. These are the things you need to do in area A, in area B, in area C. Not just look, what is the problem? Deploy military guys, deploy security agencies. That won't solve the problems.
Do you think, from the way you have seen us approach these challenges across the nation, do you think we have a good understanding of the problem and consequently approaching them the way we ought?
There is a good understanding of the problem. The only thing is we always want to take the shortcut out. And that's why I'm saying, let's deploy the military to solve the problem. These problems are not military problems. So the solution cannot be military. No matter the area you look at, it is not, those problems are not military problems. Even in the Northeast, where you have the issue of insurgency and terrorism, it is not a military problem. There are root causes. There are root causes of poverty, marginalization and things like that, which we need to address. Even right now that we've made some inroads in the Northeast, up to 2018, a lot of things have been done. But what did we do? We sat back and all of a sudden now, the governor of Borno State is going around, oh, I've rehabilitated 500 people, have done this. These are things we should have done 2 years back, not wasting time. So if you don't address the root causes, we'll just be groping around and solving the problem the same way by deploying security agencies. And that won't solve the problems.
Because, look, we have several security agencies who get different intelligence, security reports that they submit to different heads of government at different levels of government. So as a military professional, if one were to tell you we've been dealing with the problem for 10 years or for 40 years that we don't understand the problem, would you believe them?
We understand the problem. I don't believe we don't understand the problem. We understand the problem. And when you go through the National Security Strategy, that document provides for the establishment of the National Crisis Management Center, which is supposed to be somewhere. If you have a National Crisis Monitoring Center, you have it somewhere. That center is supposed to be monitoring whatever is happening everywhere. So when you have feelers, you have indicators staring you in the eyes, you quickly solve the problem. But in Nigeria, I'll give an analogy. If you drive by the Federal Secretariat, back in 2003, 2004, there are no bus stops from the Eagle Square or across the Federal Secretariat. It started by people dropping, 1, 2, 3 people dropping, and all of a sudden, you have a bus stop. Once that is realized then, and somebody stop that, it will become a problem as it is today. And that's what we normally do. You will wait until the problem escalates, then we now start trying to solve the problem without actually looking at what are the causes. Okay, people here need a bus stop. Where do you put a bus stop? You don't provide a bus stop, so the people need to stop somewhere. And those are the things we're always doing to ourselves. It's not that people don't understand. We understand our problems. But how to solve the problem is the issue. We have policies addressing some of these things, but each policy has its own constraint, and we believe the policy can work. The policy will not work if you don't have what it takes to execute the policies.
We'll talk about those who are on the receiving end of all this when we return in a moment. Please stay with us. All right, welcome back. Well, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, General Wahab, yes, we'll talk about solutions now. But, you know, on the part of the people, when they see all of these things, they interpret it and internalize it in their own way. They come to their own conclusions. And so one wonders, do you think that, well, if the authorities take certain steps, whatever predispositions that the people have, they will be willing to drop them? Or do you see some people who are just sitting down there waiting for their own opportunity to perhaps have their own pound of flesh, making it a lot tougher for us to address as a country?
Yeah, from what you said, two things are clear. Security and insecurity are two sides of the same coin. If you have a situation of insecurity, some guys will usually exploit the situation. But where the rule of law, where the legal provisions are upheld, then whoever goes against the law knows that he or she will be sanctioned. In Nigeria, sanctioning had been forgotten. So we are building a situation of impunity. And we've politicized virtually everything. And that is making the people to believe, look, whatever anybody says is just a waste of time. So to me, the first thing is for the federal government to communicate. If you are doing so much and people out there are not aware, all they see are soldiers or security agents being deployed in virtually everywhere, then they believe is, well, after all that will be done will be for us to see military guys or other security agencies. We need to communicate more, which is not happening right now. And so when there is that gap, something else will fill it. And fake news exploiters will fill the gap. And that's exactly what is happening right now in Nigeria. A lot of people are exploiting the situation. And so the average person now believes, why do I need to trust? Why do I need to believe in government? And so even if nothing happens, people exaggerate. So it is left for the government to find a way of communicating from there down to the last man so that a lot of things will happen. The British communicate with us. I give an example. You have BBC House Service. And because they realize that the average man up north here carries his radio, believes so much in whatever he hears from somebody else. And so they create the BBC House Service. And they feed the average man with information. Why couldn't we do something similar and get across to the average man on the street? So if you don't communicate, nobody knows what is happening. We must uphold the rule of law. It is not by the deployment that will solve the problem. If somebody commits an offense, it must not take 10, 15 years for a single case to be in court. We must find a way of punishing offenders, and that will deter those who have not made up their mind to become bad guys. At the same time, you compensate those who had suffered. We leave all these things and we believe that, look, when we deploy soldiers, that's the end. No, that's not the end. Nobody will believe in whatever you do.
Okay, now I'd like you to please perhaps speak a little further on this communication thing, because from all obvious implications, it seems like that's a major missing gap over the past 40 or thereabout years. Who should be communicating with the people? You have talked about government, but I don't know from what you have seen if that has had any effect over the years. Then who should be communicating with the people? What's the role there for community leaders, traditional rulers, and the rest of them? And then secondly, what should they be saying to them, and how should they be communicating it?
The communication is all-encompassing. From the federal government to the states, we have ministries, we have ministers of information, we have so many other ministries. You have community leaders, you have state governors, and you have local government chairmen, whether caretakers or whatever you call them. And then you have, as you say, community leaders and religious leaders. Everybody must be brought aboard. Let us all know what is happening. What do we need to do? Somebody must be coordinating all these efforts. And that's the major thing that is lacking. So even if you want to communicate, how do you go about it? How do you coordinate that? It is the same thing that is being passed across everybody. So we need to find out a way. If you don't, those who tweet, those who use social media will continue to have their way. And then we have nowadays those who are bloggers. That's their job. So even if you have to start using those, the bloggers, the social media, whatever, you must find a way of coordinating all these things. But the information will have to come from above, from the presidency down to the ministries, down to the states, to the local government and community and religious leaders and economic leaders. Because in each community, there are people who are the people you can call timber and caliber, people that people will trust and they will believe in. You need to use them. Let them come out and start saying, this is what the government is doing, this is what is happening, and this is the way out. If you don't do that, the gap that is being created will be filled with stories, with fake news. And right now, in the military parlance, we have what is called hybrid warfare, where it is a combination of a lot of things, including fake news, computer issues, fraud, and whatever. And then you have future war, which is already here. Somebody will be using a proxy without coming to your country and be providing information for you. And it destabilizes everybody. And that's exactly what we're facing. So if you don't neutralize that, we'll continue to grope around. And then at the end of the day, we believe somebody from outside will come and solve the problem. I cannot, for instance, go to Borno and solve the problem as a community leader in Borno because I don't belong to the group. So you must look for people within each community for them to be able to talk to their people and be able to pass messages across.
Now, you've also spoken about some economic factors the other time, especially poverty and the rest of them. According to the NBC, the latest NBC figures, the poverty rate in the North is very, very, very high. Now, how do we begin? And of course, we know what the security challenges in the North has been over the years. How do we begin to solve these problems? What do we need to do as a government, as people, private sector, and all of that? Is there anything that we haven't done that we need to do urgently to solve these problems?
Apart from the issue of communication, you need to realize that without security, there can't be development. Without development, there can't be security. So we need to get across to the people. You cannot, we can't develop your area if you don't give peace a chance. But that must be communicated to them. And the local people must be encouraged to do one or two things. It's unfortunate that we've allowed the 700-something local government to go moribund. As far as I'm concerned, we don't have local government areas, we don't have local government governance again in Nigeria. But the governors must find a way of allowing these local governments to work, to perform. Because you cannot, for instance, sit in Kaduna and want to solve the problem in Katia. You might not know what is actually happening. That's why the local governments were created. Anywhere in the world, governance is broken into little pieces. We must find a way of allowing those local governments to work and to perform and to do their job. After all, the Constitution provides the functions of each of the 3 tiers of governance. So, if you don't allow those things to perform, to work, the state governor will sit down in the state capital and nothing will happen in some areas. And gradually those guys will feel aggrieved. Those are some of the causes. So if you don't do something about that, we'll continue. But it cannot start like that because the money is not there. It has to be a gradual process. We don't have what it takes. For instance, after World War II, you have the Marshall Plan led by a general in the US and undertaken in Europe to rebuild. It might be difficult for us to rebuild most of the affected parts, but we need to start gradually. But you can only do that when the locals believe in what you're doing and give peace a chance. And it's a gradual process. And that's another problem with Nigerians. We are always impatient. We want things done now, and it must be now. So, but if you don't communicate, like I said earlier, no matter your plans, you are just wasting your time. So we have to start with communication. Let people believe and trust in what you want to do. And gradually you win them over. And then some of the locals will also come in to donate, to contribute to whatever you're doing.
When you say they want things done now, many wonder, look, if they waited all their lives and nothing has happened, why would they want the thing to be done now and then rather than wait as a patient dog on a lighter note though? But as we wind down on this one, do you think there's any merit when people say that it could be that some of the security reports that are usually submitted to those authorities, that they might see a taint of political interpretation or politicizing security reports, and so they may not take them as seriously as they would if it came from perhaps, professional body? Does it even have any merit when they say that?
There are merits in it. Even in the U.S., it's happening in the U.S., where the president went against, in the past, against his security apparatus. It happens. But at the level I think we reach now, we need to start educating ourselves. You cannot read political meanings and the political reasons to whatever we do. Those over there have institutions and have ways of correcting the anomalies. It might take some time. We don't have strong institutions, and we are allowing those institutions to get chipped away. We can't continue to allow that. So, yes, it is possible. Anybody reads different interpretation to whatever is happening. You look at yourself first. And that is why Hobbes said this world is very short and brutish. And everybody, we are all individualistic. We look after ourselves first before we think about others. But we must find a way of getting across to ourselves. After all, in this same country, in the past, at one point in the past, you can come from any part of Nigeria and go elsewhere and knock at a door. And if you want water, they give you. If you want food, they give you. We allow that to go gradually. All of a sudden, we're in a situation where I don't even know my neighbors, my next door neighbors. We need to rethink. While they are trying to be like us, we are trying to be like them. We are picking the bad part of the Western life. We need to go back. There are crisis management systems in our environment in the past. Why did we allow those things to go down the drain? We need to find a way of fine-tuning those things and getting them back to work.
All right, then we do thank you for your thoughts, retired Major General Garba Wahab. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much, John Berlin.
All right, so one other matter, which, yes, it's another challenge that needs to be addressed. It's the unemployment rate. The MBS have come up with a recent figure, and it shows that it's over 27.1%. Well, let's bring in Mr. Vincent Wani. He's a business and investment consultant. He's looked at those, and, well, let's find out. Good morning first, and thank you for joining us today on the program, Mr. Wani. Well, having looked through this unemployment report. All right. Now looking through some of these, sometimes, well, when this report come in, they may look at it in different ways and identify some areas that they need improvement upon, but there are areas too that we've been struggling or grappling with for a long time. So what stuck out for you when you looked at that report?
Okay. One, thank you very much for having me on your show this morning. The first observation is the timing and timeline of the report. For the past 2 years, we've been yearning for labor reports, labor statistics, and finally we got it. The last time we saw it was in third quarter 2018, and here we are. Here we are. We have another report, so we have to thank NBS. And if we can be having this report at least once in a year, that would make life a little bit easier for analysts and their stakeholders. Having said that, it's no longer news. The report released on Friday last week, and the number of unemployed Nigeria jumping and unemployment rate moving from 23.1% to 27.1%. I can tell you that it is even a little bit lower. This number is even a little bit lower than we had projected. We thought it would go to 30 or 30-something%. So yes, unemployment rates have gone up. And if you look at the trend from, over the last 3 years, it's been trending up from 16% up to 27.1% now. The issue is not even about the unemployment, or we know that Nigerians are having challenges getting jobs. But the structure of that data, if you dig deep into that data, look at the demographic characteristics of that data, you find out that female women are worse hit than male. Again, people living in the villages or in the rural area are worse hit than people living in the city. Again, the youth from 15 years to like 24 years are the worst hit. Almost 50% unemployed. About 48% of people in this bracket are unemployed. As we move from that 24% to maybe 32%, 24 years to 32 years, we get another bracket. Over 30% of them are unemployed. So these are the areas, these are the policy areas that government will begin to look at to see, what is going on. Also look at where people live, where people live. I've spoken about urban areas and rural areas and showing that people in the urban are having it a little bit better. But wherever you find yourself in the bracket, whether as a man, as a male or female, whether as a rural dweller or urban dweller, whether as educated or uneducated, there are issues. And for me, the most puzzling aspect of that data is about educational segmentation of people that are unemployed. You find out that people that didn't even go to school at all, and graduates, Nigerian graduates, are competing at 40-something% unemployment rate. The segment of the society in terms of education that is maybe the best at vocational training, trade and commercial segment. That is not in the chart. We have about 17%. That's the lowest. Even people that have PhD, masters, unemployment rate is over 23% in that segment. So that goes to show that skill and skill acquisition is the way to go. These are what the data is telling us. And how to go out of this is about education. We need to educate ourselves, at least to be self-employed. And we also need to make sure that our vocational training and skill acquisition is institutionalized, and we have to clean up that space, because we have seen that that space is the space where we have the lowest level of unemployment in the country. And that is the reason, of course, why Anambra State is the number is the best in the whole country. You want to say something?
Yeah, very quickly, you looked at some demographics of location and gender. I'm actually very, very concerned about the demographics of between age 15 and 34. If we combine the two segments, you looked at 15 to 24 and 25 to 34. If we look at those two, they are the worst hit. Now, in another 10 years, this age range is going to be, of course, more than they're going to be 10 years older and consequently fall into other demographics. How do we ensure that those figures do not remain the way they are 10 years from now with this particular demographic?
Policy intervention, very quickly. We have to move very quickly. See, we're already late, but it's better late than never. The two ways through which countries like ours, India have done it, China have done it, to lift their people out of poverty, is through education, skill acquisition. That is the only way out. We can build all the infrastructure, of course, infrastructure, we don't even have it. But education is the only way out. India had a national education policy well implemented for a period of 10 years before they begin to see the result. So the only way to make sure that in 10 years' time, we're not going to have people between 15 or 16 to 24 whose unemployment rate will be over 50%, is for us to do something about education.
But Mr. Wani, as important as that is, but when they then look at the figure which you spoke about those who have, the MSCs, the PhDs, they are equally hard hit with the unemployment rate. So will these other ones now look at that figure and say, why should I go get it? When look at them, they're unemployed.
That is what I said, that we need to look at our educational policy. I say educational policy. How do we connect that PhD, that BSc, that MSc to skill acquisition? It's not just theoretical engineers, theoretical economists, theoretical business. That is not the way. Look at what Switzerland is doing. You work and you acquire skill at the same time. We need to do what they call dual educational model, where you are learning in school and also have a trade, something you can do with your hands, not speaking grammar or looking for an office white-collar job. That is the way to go. Skill acquisition. See, in Anambra State, why do Anambra State having the listed unemployment rate? All of those people you see that they have their shop, they have skills, they are also educated. They are graduates. But they've gone to make use of their own hands. That is the way to go.
Just one thing, Dr. Wani. There is something on this, figure that we are talking about, this labor statistics. Well, talking about the states, you just talked about Anambra State. Just 2 steps away from that is Sokoto State, which is also very, very low, according to this labor statistics on the employment rate. But if you look at the poverty index, Sokoto State is worst hit. How do we marry those two figures?
I am telling you, yesterday night when I was looking at this figure from NBS, I had some challenges, and I'm going to go back to give it a second level analysis. Because you said that Imo State is the worst hit when it comes to unemployment rate, almost 48% unemployment rate in Imo. But that is also one of the states where education is married with entrepreneurship, Imo. So it doesn't, and when you look at life expectancy, you look at poverty rate, South, Southeast, and Southwest, they are doing far better than the North Central, Northeast, and Northwest. The chart is just here. Life expectancy. You find out that people in the Southwest, Southeast, and South South, the life expectancy far higher compared to the northern part of the country. If you also show the poverty rate of poverty, the same issue. So for me to be seen that in terms of this number just released by NBS is showing that the top 4 states that are worst hit in terms of unemployment are Anambra State, Imo State, Delta State, Akwa Ibom State, and Rivers State. It's very difficult to situate it, but then we really need to interrogate the data a little bit more.
Now, I'm also very concerned. You've talked about the skill gap and all of that. That would probably speak to the micro, small, and medium enterprises, doesn't it? With what we have, how
Yes.
quickly do you think that they can intervene?
Because if you have that skill we are talking about, you are not going to start by building a conglomerate or a big, hiring 50 people at a go and starting your business with 1 billion. No. Skilled acquisition ensures that at the end of the day, you are able to maybe start as low as barbering salon, shoemaking in a conventional way, not the normal shoe repair that we see. A little bit organized with little education. You start with small businesses. That from there you are able to provide services for small, medium scale companies or big scale companies. You supply them, you provide some little services. That's the way to go. Nigeria is boasting of having about 17.5 million SMEs in Nigeria right now, employing about average of 5 people. But since recession we had in 2016 and 2017, and now COVID-19, we've seen that a lot of these SMEs, they are out of business for one reason or the other. From March this year to around end of June, over 500,000 Nigerians that are directly employed, full-time employment, have lost their job. And when you see this type of thing happen, people supporting them, we call them maybe support staff or underemployed people that are working for them. It's always a multiple of 4 people per one full-time employment. Another issue I also find with this data is that the underemployment is very, very high, but the NBS measured underemployment by people that are working between 20 hours to 29 hours. There are people that work only 5 hours a day, but they are earning more than people working 8 hours, 10 hours in a day. So I was thinking that we have to use wage rate to even measure the underemployment. Because I've seen people that work 40 hours every week. That is 8 hours a day. Yet they are earning less than 20,000 naira in Lagos as security men all over the places. So it's not about number of hours that somebody is working. I'm not sure that's the best to measure underemployment, but how much you are taking home. Because that spells your poverty, the ability to buy and sell.
Perhaps
market,
that's
not how much time.
Perhaps that figure is drawing a line between employment and income. That's on the one hand. However, if you remember, on the 11th of June this year, the Vice President, while presenting the Economic Sustainability Plan to the President, he said that in the number of people in Nigeria that may lose their jobs because of this COVID-19 may get up to some 39.2 million by the end of the year, by December. Now, of course, there is a economic sustainability plan that they have come up with. I don't know if you have looked at it. Do you think it is something that can give us hope?
Well, I am not in a good position to give so much credence or otherwise to that document. But I was thinking that the point where we found ourselves since 2016 recession, where we've been having negative growth and finally positive growth, but very slow, requires that we shouldn't be talking about sustainability now. We're still talking about survival. And from survival, you are going to move to recovery. From recovery to growth, and from growth to sustainability. If you are not growing, how are you going to be? What are you sustaining? If you are not growing, where everybody have signaled that Nigeria is going to move into a heavy recession, worse than what we had a few years ago. IMF projected minus 5% growth by the end of the year. World Bank projected even about minus 3.5%. Ministry of Finance have signaled that everybody is signaling serious negative growth, and here we are talking about sustainability. So are we sustaining negative growth? I was thinking that you sustain when you have grown, for some time when we are growing at 6% or plus, we can say, okay, let's sustain and grow to 10%. But now we should be focusing on survival and recovery. And that is why I like the economic recovery growth plan that was launched in 2017. More probably we just decided to build on that growth and recovery and growth plan. But the truth is that growth and recovery plan of 2017 that was supposed to expire next year, 2021, does not really satisfy its objective or its performance indicator. And I was thinking that the best thing to have done is to have economic growth and recovery plan B or 2, instead of having sustainability plan because there is nothing to sustain as far as I'm concerned for now.
Do you then see any role in all of these for the states?
The states have can I say, even a far more central role to play than the federal. Of course, the federal have to deal with the policy, macroeconomic policy, fiscal policy, but the state have to step in. And if you meet them, they will tell you, hey, the federal have tied their hands, fiscal federalism, they don't have money, and all those things. But the state need to at least begin to see how they can develop SMEs. We have been talking about skill, and one of the major fallout in this data or lessons from this data is that the more we develop ourselves in this country, where we have a direct skills, we will be able to lower unemployment and match that with education. Because that education, how you behave, customer service, being polite, you'll be taught, relationship, networking. But that hard skill is very, very important. That is the major disconnect. And I think that is where the state government need to come in very quickly.
Especially when some reports indicate that, look, in about 5-10 years, almost 30-40% of some of the courses in our universities will be obsolete. It leaves you asking more questions as to whether or not we're going to be left behind. But we do thank you for some of those, for all of your thoughts, actually, Mr. Dr. Vincent Wani, business and investment consultant. All right, so, all right, let's take a look at what. Do we have some comments coming through now?
Well, there's this.
Right.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay. Well, the headache of the act of governance, the act of governance in this country is giving us is unquantifiable and immeasurable. We don't have confidence in anything, quote, anymore. I hope now it's in God, nothing more. That's from Badong Joshua. And, of course, Timidayo Musa says, this ANDP lawyer appears like, oh, come on.
All right. So there you go. That is it today on the program. We got one more. All right. We do thank you all for your comments, though. So we'll see you again tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain Kusal.
I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a wonderful day and keep safe.
Thank you so much for watching. I'm Maukwe Ogun Yusuf.